Now, China has berated New Zealand, saying the country should stop making wrong statements. This is after today's news about supporting Taiwan and its questioning of the World Health Organization about China's response to COVID and how that could be damaging our bilateral ties. Winston Peters doesn't seem so fazed, though, and this is just hours ago, actually. China has flexed its muscles and punched Australian meat exports in the face. Meat exports banned from Australians' criticism of China. It is of great concern about our relationship with our major trading partner, so a welcome to Sarah's country. For the first time, Charles Finny, one of my very favourite trade commentators. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here.
Can I just say, firstly, thank you so much for your opening address in the Epidemic Response Committee around trade. You brought a lot of sense and light to that conversation. How's things progressed from that?
Well, actually, I'm quite pleased because I came up with a 10-point plan, and I think about 8 of the 10 points have either been implemented or are being implemented. So my views and the views of the government and government advisors obviously weren't too far away from each other. So if only I could achieve that all the time. But it was a very useful process, I think. Good that there's some checks and balances on the government when they're so powerful right now. But I think everyone was, at that time anyway, in a trying to solve the problem mode. And we were talking about some real problems, particularly not really problems of immediate focus to your audience, because it was more the manufacturing sector that had been shut down. The agricultural sector had largely been allowed to be kept going. You
were very in support of opening up forestry and wood exports as soon as possible, though.
Indeed, and that's happened, so I'm pleased. That's one of my 10 points that's been delivered on.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Hey, now, Charles, it is really concerning. How do we balance a relationship with our major trading partner whilst maintaining support of our other trading partners' support of emissions, such as what's going on at the moment with this COVID response?
Well, I think that the issue you talked about at the start with China criticising New Zealand was more about Taiwan's participation at the World Health Organization Assembly meeting in Geneva next week. And it's something actually we've supported for a number of years. I think actually they may have been complaining most about the way in which the news that we would be supporting Taiwan's participation was delivered by the foreign minister. And he was quite in China's face on that. And I think it was a bit of a tick off for that more than actually us supporting the participation. Because as I say, we've supported it for many years, and actually we're in very good company. Canada, US, UK, Australia, France, Britain, Germany, Japan, all supporting the same position as New Zealand. They weren't being told off today. So I think it was probably something else. But now we have to be very careful. Obviously, we are dealing with a very major economy that is essentially run by one party and one person. So you don't really want to offend that country very often. But I think it's important that we do take positions of principle when we feel strongly on issues. And right now, the world is facing a global pandemic. Taiwan is our 7th largest trading partner. We have normally got large numbers of Taiwanese visiting here, large numbers of New Zealanders visit Taiwan. So actually having them part of the World Health Organization process is in our interests. And I think a lot of the world agrees with us on that one. It's actually in China's interests as well, because there's even more people traveling from Taiwan to China and China to Taiwan than coming to New Zealand.
Jumping across the ditch, this is a really worrying situation. The blacklisting of 4 red meat abattoirs in Australia as a response to China imposing this import ban as a trade war tactic. And of course, the Australian barley industry is heavily affected as well.
Yeah, and it's been very interesting the last 48 hours. Yesterday, we heard that China was potentially going to be imposing anti-dumping duties on Australian barley going back 10 years. And then today we've heard that 4 abattoirs have been delisted for beef exports to China. Now, I'm always a little bit cautious when it comes to things like delisting of meat plants, because there actually might be a technical reason for it. This is only news that's come out today. I'd like to know more before drawing strong conclusions, but certainly Australia-China relations are not fantastic right now, and China has demonstrated over the years that it can use trade as a retaliation for political problems. So something we need to be watching very carefully. Canada's got problems right now, thanks to, at the request of the United States, arresting the chief financial officer of Huawei, and there's a court case going on, and there's Chinese retaliation against Canada. Indeed, they seem to have got a couple of Canadians in the clangor in China as sort of a bit of a hostage diplomacy as well. So it's very interesting. But in other jurisdictions have faced the wrath of China in the past and suffered trade retaliation. I don't think we should be worried about this at this point in time for New Zealand. I think that we've had our hands slapped by the foreign ministry at their press conference yesterday, and we'll take note. But I think our relationships in reasonably good shape, as Winston Peters says, and I'd be very surprised if there was any retaliation against New Zealand product.
Can't be too good on the friendship when Trump walks out of a press conference today, questions heavily about COVID and says, "Ask China." How is that developing, this US-China trade war?
I've been watching that also very closely today. There are mixed messages. There are some quite nationalistic Chinese newspapers which are beating the nationalistic drum and threatening not to implement the trade deal that was done last year. But there are other sources which are suggesting actually China is about to drop some more tariffs for the United States. But it's obviously a very fragile relationship, and our good friend President Trump could say the wrong thing, or the Chinese could say something he doesn't like. So anything could happen that could cause that relationship to deteriorate. And as we said at the start, there is this whole issue over investigations into the cause of COVID-19, and I think obviously the world needs to know where it came from, and we need to learn from it. But to suggest it's come out of a Chinese laboratory is quite an accusation to be made, and the Chinese don't like it and are responding accordingly. Luckily, right now, only with words.
Mel Poulton, our now special agricultural trade envoy we had on Serious Country the other day, Charles, spoke largely around the rise of global protectionism. And of course, we've seen that for some time in the UK, in particular towards New Zealand lamb. Are you concerned about this, and should New Zealand be concerned?
I think globally there are some countries who think like New Zealand and have been opening markets as a response to COVID-19, not closing them. But there are more examples of protectionism occurring. Interestingly, even within the EU, there seem to be some EU members being protectionist vis-a-vis other EU members, which I think is causing everyone there and the Commission a lot of concern. So yes, but hopefully other countries will see the light and join New Zealand, Singapore and others, Canada, Australia, in keeping those markets open and keeping trade flowing. New Zealand exports are holding up really well, I have to say, right now, and I hope that continues. I am worried, perhaps not in the short term, but as we move into a global recession, there has to be a trade impact, but we haven't seen too much of it yet. We've been very lucky. I think it's because we produce so much food, and people need food to survive.
Just lastly, while I've got you here, because I would love to extend the invitation to come and have you on Serious Country again, Charles.
Anytime.
Because Tony Watson here, a very big fan of the show, Tony. He says he's having some great insights from listening to you. I've been worrying about these geographical indicators under this New Zealand EU free trade agreement. Mel Poulton assures me that the pedal is still down on making sure that agreement's underway. Where are we at, and what are you hearing?
Okay, well, apparently some quite good progress was made in the last round of negotiations. No one could travel, so it was done by Zoom and other technologies, and actually took a long time because it was sort of time zones got in the way. But there were some quite good achievements, but mainly around technical issues such as customs cooperation. We still don't have an offer from the EU on market access for agriculture. There is an offer apparently that's been tabled for market access for non-agricultural products, and I'm told it's not good enough, but at least they've tabled something. But I'm not sure that the issue of GIs, geographical indicators, is yet resolved. And I think it will be one of those issues that goes right down to the end of the negotiation. Obviously, the paradigm that operates in New Zealand is very different from that in the EU, and we don't believe that we should be using GIs as a protectionist tool, and there's a potential for them to be used as such by the EU. So it's going to be a tough issue, and I think we've probably got many more months of negotiation ahead. But it's great that COVID-19 hasn't disrupted the negotiations too much, and that they are progressing.
I know we've got vineyard owners, and I know Simon Berry from Whitestone Cheese. They will be very concerned in making sure that we keep our medal down on Camembert and Syrah and Chardonnay.
And Brie and everything, yes. Parmesan. Yeah, no, we're used to those terms. They've been used in New Zealand for years. They're traded globally. Our position and the EU's position is very difficult. But of course, look, very different. But if the EU gives us an absolutely fantastic deal and were to give us full free trade in meat and dairy, then I think we could probably compromise. But I haven't yet seen details of that great deal on market access for meat and dairy.
We'll need every single amazing brand and marketing mind at the table, Charles, to rebrand our product uniquely New Zealand and make sure that lasts, because it's certainly a hard thing. Charles Finny, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And as I said, look forward to you joining us again. I would really love to know, you're based in Wellington, how's flying in there on Friday going to be?
You should have flown in today. I believe that there is it's definitely going to be raining on Friday. I'm a golfer, so I check these things, and I'm not playing on Friday, but I'm playing on Saturday. So I noticed it's going to be raining. I think there will be a bit of wind, but I don't think you should be too worried.
Wonderful.
It doesn't seem as though it's going to be a terrible storm.
That's what I like to hear, flying into Wellington. Thank you so much, Charles.
This is Sarah's Country.